So, promised last week that we were getting to a chapter 19, and it was going to be a controversial sermon, so I hope that you're ready for this. As a recap, though, sitting in the heat of the day we talked about, and how that pictures us waiting on God and being ready despite our circumstances, and that Abraham is a picture of so many things, waiting on God, having faith in God, just all the trials he goes through, and we're not even done with him yet. And just his faith to have sacrifice, his faith to lift up his family and move again and again and just sojourn. He is the man of faith. He's the father of faith, as the Bible says. Now, if you turn to chapter 19 of Genesis, this chapter is of much focus. Much focus, much criticism actually against the Bible too. Because it is a graphic chapter. It's a chapter about God's wrath, and not just God's wrath, God the Son's wrath. Because God the Son, Jesus Christ, is what in the last chapter? He's talking to Abraham, right? Then after he gets done chatting with Abraham, he goes with his two angels, he's walking towards Sodom to see if the cry is as bad as it's coming up to heaven. And of course it is. So this is Jesus Christ and his two angels going to Sodom. And just to let you know, even though I'm saying that, I'm not saying God changes. Because God does not change when it comes to his nature, about how he feels about sin, and all these things. Sodom and Gomorrah and its destruction is supposed to be unto us an example, or an ensample, as the Bible says, the same word. An older word to say example, but it's an example of what God thinks of this evil, and it's actually a picture of what's going to happen to the whole world because the cry comes up to heaven. Eventually. It does. And so keep that in mind, that when I'm talking about this stuff, I'm trying to actually keep my opinion out of this for the most part. I'm trying to keep my opinion out of it because it's a much debate. People like to debate with their emotions. And yes, I get riled up here and stuff like that, but that's because I believe in what I preach. I believe in the Bible, and I'm zealous. I'm excited about it. That's why I am the way I am. And maybe it's genetic too, but if you ever watch or listen to my dad tell a story, pretty much the same way. But before we begin reading into the chapter, the controversy about Sodom and Gomorrah, about sodomite agenda, about the homosexuals in our country and across the world, right? The controversy does not come from the Bible. Let me just make that clear, and I'm going to explain this as I develop it. The controversy does not come from the Bible. It comes from what the world wants you to think. That's what it comes from. Because the Bible couldn't be more clear about what it thinks, what God thinks about sodomites. It couldn't be. Okay? I mean, you could say, well, he should word it like this. No, God worded it how he worded it in the Bible, throughout the Bible, and it's clear. And the world wants you to think certain things based on manipulating us with our emotions, don't they? They manipulate us with our emotions. With fake stories, anecdotes in the movies and the music. Oh, they're like you. Coercing us into believing something that is not Bible. It's not true. And furthermore, in this prelude to this message, we should never fear, ever fear. And I know that people in here might not believe this, how I believe this, or how I see how the Bible, and you can say, oh, you're misinterpreting it. That's your opinion. But we should never fear, ever fear about speaking about sodomites, a sodomite agenda that's pushed on us, obviously pushed on us. You can't say, oh, no, it's not. You're living under a rock if you think that. And more so on our children. Got to be careful today. And the world has tricked Christians into cowering into a closet while they came out. It's the hand of Satan on all of it. It is. There's nothing good about it, right? There's no silver lining to it. There isn't. None of it is Christian. All of it is unnatural perversion. And as the Bible clearly and completely opposite of what the world says, depicts sodomites as violent, insatiable, unmerciful, haters of God, filthy, vile, nothing ever good. That's the Bible. I didn't make those words up. That's what the Bible says. So good morning to that. That's how I say good morning today. And some of you may say, and I'm not without understanding in this, I have a friend. You have a friend. He or she is nice. I have a relative. Especially in today's world. And we'll get into some stats, too, to explain some things about how it's grown. The amount of people claiming LGBTQ plus has grown. Okay, and we'll get into that. And I say this without reservation or apology, not because I'm some meanie, but because God wants me to be a sturdy pillar about this and not some over here, move the goalpost. Oh, the politicians move the goalpost. I got to get where they are. No. I got my goalpost set up by the Bible. That's where I'm sticking. So without apology, without reservation, I say shame on anybody who has a sodomite friend that you're chill with or something like that. Or you confide in. Or a relative or not. Or having any kind of relationship with them. Do you have relationships with serial adulterers? Murderers? Rapists? Child molesters? Kidnappers? Human traffickers? Are they your buddies? No. No. Because according to God's criminal laws, all those things are the death penalty. Aren't they? And if you're conflicted about this, it's not because the Bible got it wrong. Okay? It's not because the Bible got it wrong. It's because it doesn't, it plainly, or the fact that the Bible, like I said, doesn't plainly tell Christians about what to think about this. It's because you've been manipulated by the world. By the media, by the music, by the movies, by the wickedness of the rules of politics. That's where that comes from. That's where that controversy comes from. It doesn't come from the Bible. There's only one way to think about this. And then the world comes in and tries to brainwash you. Now, you can see how this is a very controversial subject, isn't it? Because look at the world today. You're supposed to just be like, okay with it. Shove it down your throat, be okay with it. Now, if it was just a natural thing to be okay with it, do you think they'd have to shove it down your throat? Or show your kids without you knowing about it? Be liars about it and be deceitful about it? No, it would just happen naturally. But it doesn't. Because it's unnatural. My friend, look at if you've done any research about it, I did, because I wanted to know what the old-timers thought about this. They're more harsh about it than I am. They're like, leave them all on an island and let the sharks eat them and stuff like that. They're harder preaching than I'd preach. Okay? And we'll get into more of this. Let's read a little bit. Let's see what the Bible says. Chapter 19. Genesis. We'll read a couple verses here, a few verses. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat. Now this is the two angels that were with Jesus talking to Abraham. And there came two angels to Sodom at even, and Lot sat in the gate of Sodom, and Lot, seeing them, rose up to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground, and he said, Behold now, my lords, turn in, I pray you, into your servant's house, and tarry all the night, and wash your feet, and you shall rise up early and go on your ways. And they said, Nay, but we will abide in the street all night. And he pressed upon them, or he insisted upon them greatly. And they turned in unto him and entered into the house. And he made them a feast, and he did bake them unleavened bread, and they did eat. So, even though in ancient times people did things differently, with hospitality and like cultural things are different, it's still not a good idea to stay out at night in a big wicked city. Like, there's nothing good happening down the alleyway, and even in smaller towns too. Like, my wife and I were just talking about Barrett, and how people get shot over road rage. Okay, and there's wickedness out there, especially at night. Now, I don't know when that shot happened about road rage. Probably some guy under the influence, I would suggest. It was in Barron, yeah. I think so. Really? Oh my. Yeah. Wasn't he under methamphetamine or something like that? That's right. I remember reading about that. Well, I'm very sorry about that. Oh, well, there you go. Sometimes the system does work, but I'm glad we got justice there. And, things like that, and even though I wasn't going to go down that road, but the thing is yeah, I know, isn't that crazy? But how things at nighttime. You don't want to be out at night in the city, okay? You know what I mean? And something, Lot knows something about this city too. He's like, no, guys, come inside. You don't want to be out here at nighttime during the moon. You don't want to be out here. There's probably a pride parade tonight or something like that, okay? Let's read on. Verse 4, but before they lay down, the men of the city, even the men of Sodom, compassed the house round, both old and young, all the people from every quarter. And they called unto Lot and said unto him, where are the men that came into thee this night? Bring them unto us, that we may know them. And Lot went out at the door unto them, and shut the door after him, and said, I pray you, brethren, do not so wickedly. Behold, now I have 2 daughters, which have not known man. Let me, I pray you, bring them out unto you. And do ye to them as is good in your eyes. Only unto these men do nothing, for therefore came they under the shadow of my roof. You see how Lot thinks about this? Because what's going on right here? Oh, let us, get to know them. What's your zodiac sign and stuff like that. No, that's not what it's saying, because getting to know somebody like that, when it says they want to know them, that's a very G-rated way of God saying a sexual intercourse. That's what know them means. The wife knew her husband and they conceived a child. That's talking about having sexual intercourse. And that's what these men, old and young, not children probably, but just, young and old people, like adults, but young and old, different ages. And coming out there, and Lot says, do not so wickedly. He thinks what they're going to do is worse than if he were to give his daughters to them. He thinks it's worse. Now, Lot isn't right in the head, I think, for a couple reasons, because he's in Sodom. He's kind of a backslidden Christian. But even him, he knows, he's like, do not so wickedly. Here, just take my daughters. Don't do it to these men. Strange. And right off the bat, no warning, no instigation from the visitors, or Lot, just being a nice, hospitable person, just a normal person, looking out for the well-being of these 2 people, and this nightmare comes upon them. No reason. So what's the response from the Sodomites? Verse 9 to 10, by 9 and 10. And they said, stand back. And they said again, this one fellow came into sojourn, talk about Lot, and he will needs be a judge. Now will we deal worse with thee than with them. And they pressed sore upon the man, even Lot, and came near to break the door. But the men put forth their hand and pulled Lot into the house to them and shut the door. The angels pulled Lot in, because Lot's trying to be diplomatic with them. So what's the response? Oh, you don't want to fork over your guests for some forced physical abuse? Oh, they are bad. That's not your lifestyle. We get it. It's okay. We're just like you. We're not violent or anything. We're just going to make this happen or force you. It's fine. No, they said, we're going to do worse unto you now, because you dared judge us. Isn't that how it is today? You can't say anything, can you? You'll be stifled. Now, nothing like this is probably going to happen to you, but I've heard some things happen. There was a church in L.A. That I listened to. I don't listen to him much anymore just because I just don't. But he's still a good preacher, soul winner, IFB, just like us. And people were saying, well, he preached good, really hard sermons against the Sodomites, and they bombed his church. They threw an incendiary device in his church. Thank God there was no one in here, blew it up. And of course, no one found their cameras and stuff, but no one got arrested. Okay? The church's name was First Works Baptist Church. And they got bombed because they dared say anything about the homosexual mafia that's out there. So God describes the Sodomites as undiplomatic, ruthless, unreasonable, violent rapists first. Romans 1:28 states, and even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do those things which are not convenient or natural, because the natural things, even sins, natural sins like heterosexual things or like lying, those things come naturally because it's a part of our sinful flesh. These things, though, are inconvenient. They are unnatural. They are unseemly. they are not convenient to do. You have to be weird. Being filled with all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, despiteful, proud boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, implacable, meaning insatiable, or they cannot be satisfied, unmerciful. And you see in verse 10 the visualization of the insatiable character of the Sodomites. The insatiable character. Even after, and let's read a little more. Verse 11, and they smote them, the angels smote the Sodomites that were coming to the door, and they smote the men that were at the door of the house with blindness, both small and great, so that they were wearied themselves to find the door. Even after they're struck down with blindness, they're wearying themselves at the door. Just what a heart that is, a heart of a beast. You just keep on going and going and going and going. Even if they're getting their leg cut off, they're just like, go, go, go. Insatiable. So let's pause in this chapter, and we're going to turn to a different place, and then look at some statistics from our government. Turn to Judges 19. Judges 19 is almost a parallel story. If you've ever read Judges 19, it's a parallel story almost. And this is during a time when things were weird in Israel. There was no king, and people did that which is right in their own eyes. And it's a story about a town called Gibeah in Benjamin. Hold on just a sec, it turned way too far. And this is like the last story in Judges. So keep your finger in, or, well, we might not. We might come back to Genesis. Might, maybe. We're going to be turning a couple places. Let's start in verse 13. So this is a story about a guy, his concubine plays the harlot, or plays the whore, I guess is what it says, and leaves and goes back to her old family or something like that. She leaves just leaves the house and just goes back with the dad. And he goes to get her, and now they're coming back. They're trying to come back home. So verse 13 of Judges 19. And he said unto his servant, come and let us, and they go into this town, Gibeah, and they find somebody who's just like Lot, he wants to just he knows what's going to go down in the town at night, and he wants them to be safe. It says, and he said unto his servant, come and let us draw near to one of these places to lodge all night in Gibeah, or in Ramah. And they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down upon them when they were by Gibeah, which belongeth to Benjamin. And they turned aside thither to go in and to lodge in Gibeah. And when he went in, he sat him down in the street of the city, for there was no man that took them into his house to lodging. Behold, there came an old man from his work out of the field at even, which was also of Mount Ephraim, and he sojourned in Gibeah, but the men of the place were Benjamites. And when he had lifted up his eyes, he saw a wayfaring man in the street of the city. The old man said, whither goest thou, and whence comest thou? And he said unto him, we are passing from Bethlehem, Judah, toward the side of Mount Ephraim. From thence am I, and I went to Bethlehem, Judah, but I am now going to the house of the Lord, and there is no man that receiveth me to house. Yet there is both straw and provender for our asses, and there is bread and wine also for me, and for thy handmaid, and for thy young man which is with thy servants. There is no want of anything. And the old man said, peace be with thee. Howsoever, let all thy wants lie upon me, only lodge not in the street. So he's telling you, don't do this. Don't lodge in the street. It's not safe. That's what the implication is. Verse 21, so he brought him into the house and gave provender unto the asses, and they washed their feet and did eat and drink. Now as they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, which were certain sons of Belial, beset the house round about, and beat at the door, and spake to the master of the house, the old man, saying, bring forth the man that came into thine house, that we may know him. Sound familiar? Pretty much parallel there. Verse 23, and the man, the master of the house, went out unto them and said unto them, nay, my brethren, say, I pray you, do not so wickedly. Pretty much verbatim almost. Seeing that this man is come unto mine house, do not this folly. Behold, here is my daughter, a maiden, and his concubine. And I will bring out now, and humble ye them, and do with them what seemeth good unto you. But unto this man do not so vile a thing. But the men would not hearken to him, so the man took his concubine, and brought her forth unto the men, and they knew her, and abused her all the night until the morning. When the day began to spring, they let her go. Then came the woman in the dawning of the day, and fell down at the door of the man's house where her lord was, till it was light. And her lord rose up in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to his way. And behold, the woman his concubine was fallen down at the door of the house, and her hands were upon the threshold. She's dead. And he said unto her, Up and let us be going. But none answered. Then men took her up on an ass. And the man rose up and gat him into his place. And when he was come unto his house, he took a knife and laid hold on his concubine and divided her, together with her bones, into 12 pieces, and sent her into all the coasts of Israel. And it was so that all that saw it said, There was no such deed done, nor seen from the day that the children of Israel came up out of the land of Egypt unto this day. Consider of it, take advice, and speak your minds. Interesting way to end that. Speak your minds. So the story pretty much parallel, almost. And here they're called sons of Belial, okay? And this time, this concubine is forced to death. So they go both ways. It doesn't matter. The husband cuts her in 12 pieces, sends them to the tribes of Israel, all coasts, which is weird, yes, but it's Judges, so. Which is a picture of the disgust you should feel when you hear about something like this. That's what I think about that. He sends all these pieces out to the 12 tribes, right? And they open this parcel that they would get, and they see this piece of a human being. Imagine the disgust you would have. That's the disgust you're supposed to have when you hear about a story like this. That's the feeling you should have. That's the appropriate response. That's what I believe it pictures. That's the message he was trying to get across. So 400,000 people, and then in the next chapter, we're not going to, just for sake of time, not going to read it. 400,000 people, they hear about this, they get the packages, and they're like, what is going on? This is insane. Nothing like this has ever been done in Israel since the day we've been coming out of Egypt. What's going on? So 400,000 people are gathered together in Judges 20. 100,000 of people are taken out of that 400,000 to go up to Gibeah, which belongs to the tribe of Benjamin. But Benjamin wouldn't give the men up. Okay? They're like, no, we're not giving them up. Because you're going to put them to death. Because they were like, oh, if we're giving them to us, we're going to put them to death. Okay? Which, yeah, appropriate, right? Benjamin wouldn't give them up. So this army and the rest of Israel goes up, demands these criminals be delivered for execution, and Benjamin refuses. So the fight is on with all these tribes of Israel, these 100,000 people, and Benjamin. Now, anyone know what happened to Benjamin in Judges 20? Anybody? Nearly wiped out. Nearly wiped out. Remember Saul, he said, I come from the least of the houses. Why is that? Because they were almost wiped out. Because of this. Why were they almost wiped out? By the counsel of God, they were almost wiped out too. They went to the house of God and asked what God wanted them to do, and he said, go up there and fight them. Judah first. Judah go first. So God describes this story in Judges 19 and 20. What do you think should happen to who sides with Sodomites? Compare this with Romans 1:32, stating, who knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death, not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do them. Leviticus 20:13, if a man also lie with mankind, he lie with a woman, both of them have committed abomination, they shall surely be put to death, their blood shall be upon them. So God counseled their death warrant. And we see even in the New Testament, Paul repeating the same code of conduct in Romans 1. So let's take a journey. Okay, let's take a journey. Turn to Romans with me, chapter 2. Because I've been talking a lot about Romans 1. And half of Romans is talking about saved people that are in Rome and how we are saved by believing in Jesus Christ from faith to faith. And then it gets into the other half of Romans 1. It starts talking about what these people who are given over to a reprobate mind, and they worship the Creator more than the creation. They're unthankful. They don't glorify God. They hold the truth in unrighteousness, meaning they're unsaved, yet they know how to get saved. That's what holding the truth in unrighteousness means. So where are we going? Oh yeah, Romans 2. I know I'm feeding you a lot. I'm kind of t-shirt canning it to you right now, but I'm not trying to go over your head with anything. Okay, this is a subject that I think people are a little cloudy on, so I want to be clear. So I'm going to a lot of places. At least I'm trying to. Okay. And just talking about siding yourself with sodomites. Okay, like I was just talking about that guy in LA that got bombed, right? There were people that were saying he deserved that because of what the inflammatory things he said. Now, he wasn't saying, and I never listen to anybody that says, hey, let's rise up and go catch us some sodomites and like burn them all in a house or something. No, I don't listen to people that say that. Nothing. No. The farthest I've ever heard anybody say anything is that if the government had this law, then it would be okay. But people aren't supposed to go out and commit vigilante justice. That's not Bible. I never listened to that. I would never preach that, right? But people like to say that you do. Just to discredit them. But you do not side with them, okay? I don't care if some preacher that's a soul-winning, saved preacher, right? He gets way off the handle and preaches some hard sermon against sodomites or adultery or whatever he does, and he just goes a little overboard. And he ends up having like a mob against him. I'm not joining the mob against the church. Because you know what's going to happen? You're going to end up like Benjamin. They tried to protect them, and they were destroyed. You don't side with the world against the church, against saved people. Yeah, we're not perfect, and maybe someone does get up here and say something super incendiary and inflammatory, okay? And it's like, well, you kind of asked him for it. There's no excuse for you to get on the side of the world, especially with a group of sodomites, holding up signs and picketing against a church. That's a good way to get struck by lightning, so to speak. Many things could happen. Get hit by a bus while you're in a field where there's no buses. It'll happen. You go to the deep part of the sea, you'll get bit by a serpent. Okay, God will find you. Right? Anyways, chapter 2 of Romans. So we're speaking all these things, okay? Paul is talking about they're being filled with all unrighteousness. They're given over to reprobate mind. He's talking about how, they're given the recompense of their error, which was meat. He's giving all of these judgments, isn't he, against these homosexuals, men and women, okay? But then you get into chapter 2, okay? And let's just read the first verse. Therefore thou art inexcusable, O man, whosoever thou art, that judgest. For wherein thou judgest another, thou condemnest thyself, for thou that judgest doeth the same things. Immediately you can think like, see, we're not supposed to judge. Well, here's why that doesn't make sense, okay? Paul isn't saying in this next chapter, right after he just got delivering this incendiary, inflammatory letter, right? He's not saying, okay, even though I just told you how all these reprobates deserve death and are filled with all unrighteousness, naming them all these things and, vile, dirty, filthy, whatever, don't judge them. What? Like, he's just going to contradict himself immediately? Is that what the Bible is? This super incendiary letter and then don't judge them. No, that's not what it is. I'm going to just give you a little teaser on what this means. Someday maybe someone will go into Romans 1 and do a study. But here it is. The one reason it's not saying that is because that doesn't make any sense. But what is being described in these 3 chapters is, one, Paul is writing to saved people how they were saved in chapter 1, right? We discussed that a little bit. Then about the reprobate filth that's in Rome. Then in chapter 2, it speaks about how the Gentiles and the Jews are being no different than each other when it comes to sin, okay? It talks about in the end of chapter 2 here, it says, but he is a Jew which is one inwardly, and circumcision is that of the heart and spirit. And praise is not of the letter, it's of God. It's of God, the praise is of God. Inward man, talking about the inward man. That's the real saved person in there. It's not a fleshly circus that you perform. It's on the inside. That's where the change happens. That's where you got to have your heart circumcised, your mind circumcised, and walk in the new man. That's the real Jew to God. Okay, and that's what chapter 2 speaks about. They're no different when it comes to sin, which is proclaimed clearly in Romans 3. Romans 3 says what? Hey, we all come short of the glory of God and have sinned. There is none righteous, no, not one. And then in chapter 4, 5, and all that, it talks about what? The saving grace of Jesus Christ. Doesn't it? That's what it's actually talking about. It's saying, hey, these inexcusable man is the saved Jewish person that thinks that they're still more deserving of it or something like that than some Gentile who is a sinner and didn't know the law. But he says, hey, the Gentiles blaspheme God because of the Jews' tradition of, hey, you need to get circumcised, hey, you need to follow the law. That's what that's actually saying. It's not saying, yeah, here's all this stuff about like the homosexuals and stuff like that and how they're wicked and filled with all unrighteousness. Don't judge them. That doesn't make sense. Okay? I know that the people like to say that, but it just doesn't make sense. And that's just a little snippet of that. We need to move on. Let's look at some real-world stats. Okay? We have a little bit of time. Let's look at some stats. 3.5% of the population is sodomites in 2012. That's LGBTQ everything. I might go a little fast, so please follow. Now it's 7.6. Huge jump. Millions of people. Is that because we're just getting nicer and we're just getting more godly? No, it's because we're getting more wicked. And the manipulation by the media is getting stronger and stronger every year, every June. Okay. So 25 million people in America. But even though they are a minority, okay, they're a minority. And this is all stuff I found on the National Institute of Health, hiv.gov. Not my opinion, not something I made up. Not some conservative thing I looked up either. The ratio on which little boys, and now I'm sorry this is graphic, this is just the truth, are molested by men rather than women, than little girls, 20-1. 20-1. They say 11-1, but that's because they're only saying that it's, oh, well, a homosexual is actually just an adult that likes an adult guy. That's a homosexual. No, actually, any kind of male-to-male, whatever age discrepancy, that's sodomites. That's sodomite. Don't let them lie to you. 67% HIV is with sodomites. And that's not even accurate, because they're using this biased fact that we're talking about two adult guys. No, it's all of it, so you get a higher percentage. And really the weird fact, if you do the math, and I was listening to a guy that did the math with this, they're 270 times more, 70% more likely to get HIV than a heterosexual man. That's not even married. Romans 1 says, and likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust one toward another, men with men, working that which is unseemly and receiving in themselves that recompense of their error which was meat. HIV, that's what that is. They're 270% more perceptible to HIV. That's the recompense of the error that was meat. It's a solid, justified measure that they're given from God for what they've done. HIV. Way more susceptible to it. Okay, that's why you shouldn't listen to Freddie Mercury. Okay? I used to listen to it too back when I was worldly. Don't listen to that. Okay? Don't feel bad for him for dying of AIDS either. God says it's the recompense of their error which was meat. It's justified. We're getting a picture. But I'm out of time. So, and you're like, whew, my goodness. But, here's the thing. This isn't a nice subject to talk about, is it? I don't like getting up here and talking about it. Honestly, I had to really pray for boldness and clarity of mind, just in case one of you guys wanted to glare at me the whole time I'm doing this. And I'm just like, I just keep on striving forward. And I'm just like, hi, keep going. All right? It's like if someone were to give you the bird on the road. You're just like, hi, keep going. All right? I don't want to just keep talking about it either. It's sick. It's gross. But the Bible talks about it. It's the counsel of God. And, even if you feel conflicted about it, some things I said, maybe you think things I said were incendiary or just plainly not true, at least you should be thankful. I would be thankful. I'm not trying to puff myself up or give myself an award here. You should be thankful that there's someone that wants to get up and tell you regardless of how you feel about it. Because that's someone who loves you. I actually love you, and I want you to know the truth, even if it feels like you're getting whacked with a cactus, okay? All right, that's all I have for you, all right? I'm sure we've got to move on now. We'll move on from this, okay? When it comes to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, that's going to be more interesting stuff. It's not going to be like stats from the NIH. All right, let's bow our heads.